How to be vegan for beginners. So I've been getting a lot of positive feedback on my video on how to be vegetarian for beginners that I'm gonna leave right here or in the description. So I thought that I would make the vegan version because a lot of you asked for that as well. There are some similarities, but I'm going to really focus on the subjects that I don't touch on the vegetarian video. So I really recommend that you watch both if you want to get like the full information. So I already made a pretty big disclaimer on my vegetarian video, and I encourage you to go watch that if you're interested, so you get all the info, but I'm not going to repeat that. I'm just going to say that my goal is not to encourage you to go on any type of diet. I do tell my clients that it's better to eat more plant-based foods and less animal foods because that's what the scientific consensus shows is healthiest. But this does not mean that you can't be perfectly healthy on an omnivore diet. So first of all, what does being vegan mean? People who are plant-based don't eat any animal products, so no red meat, no chicken, no fish, seafood, no eggs, no dairy, and no honey. Vegans are people who are plant-based, and they also exclude animal products from their lifestyle choices. So they don't use products that are tested on animals. They don't wear like wool or leather, or they usually don't go to like circuses, zoos, aquariums, things like that. But for comprehension purposes here, and just to simplify everything, I will be referring to vegans for just like the food aspect, the nutritional aspect. And now, how to become vegan. So first of all, aside from the foods that I just listed, here are a few less obvious, some are still maybe obvious, but some are not so obvious foods that aren't vegan. I'm just gonna read off this list right here. So butter, that's pretty obvious, but you know, watch out. Mayonnaise, gelatin, whey, and then where it becomes a little bit trickier is that you have to watch out for certain vitamins like vitamin D3, which is made from lanolin, which is like sheep wool. You also want to watch out for some white sugar, which is made from bone char. Also some food dyes. So red food dye is basically made from carmine, which is like crushed beetles. Certain potato chips as well, and certain pasta that are made with eggs, certain crackers made with honey, certain sauces, and certain alcohols. So if you want to be 100% vegan, make sure that you keep these foods in mind, that you're always checking the label to make sure. Start slow with small steps. So maybe you've just watched a documentary on veganism and now you want to become vegan, or you just had this like aha moment and you're like, okay, now I'm just gonna cut out all animal products from my house and become vegan. That can be a great motivator, and at first with all this initial motivation you can feel like that's really the way to go, but I do recommend that you actually take it slowly. You want to be actually able to sustain this, and the slower, smaller steps that you take, the easier it will be to do so. So maybe if you're used to eating meat like every day, you can cut back and be like, okay, I'm only gonna have meat like once a week. And then if you're also cutting out all other animal products, you can be like, okay, maybe I'm still allowed to have like eggs on this day, or like dairy on this day. Kind of do it gradually. If you start cutting out everything all at once, it's gonna be hard and it may be a little bit overwhelming and you may want to quit. And then also when it comes to incorporating vegan foods, if you're eating like more beans and legumes, you want to incorporate that slowly. Same thing with like all the fruit that you're going to be eating and the vegetables. They are excellent for your health and they are really rich in fiber, which is amazing, but if you're not used to it, it can cause like bloating and gas. So again, make sure to do that slowly. Take things slow, little by little. That's the way to go. Find some good vegan substitutions. Going vegan obviously means giving up certain foods, but don't be afraid. You can find really great substitutions for these foods. Instead of meats, you can try getting like Beyond Meat or Impossible burgers or plant-based patties, things like that. Instead of fish, you can also get like, now they're making fake fish. It's crazy. It's getting really good. You can also try like sushi that doesn't have fish. I know that for me that was a big thing, sushi, but you know, I have avocado sushi. It's great, it's delicious. Instead of eggs, you can have vegan eggs, like just eggs, things like that, or like tofu scramble. Instead of dairy, you can have lots of different plant-based milk, like oat milk, nut milk, soy milk. There's tons of different milks. There's also dairy-free yogurts and dairy-free cheeses that you can find. And then if you're used to having honey, you can use like agave or maple syrup as a replacement as well. And obviously you can find things like vegan butter and vegan ice cream, vegan cookies, vegan desserts, vegan whatever you want. So hopefully this helps you realize that being vegan doesn't mean that you only have to eat like salads. You can totally eat salads, that's great, but you can also eat most of the foods and the recipes that you were already eating before and just swap out the meat or animal product with an alternative, with a replacement. And I know that a lot of vegans say that it's better to eat like whole foods and you want to be eating like beans and legumes, things like that, instead of fake meats. And you know, health-wise, I mean, yeah, that's like ideal, but you don't have to be perfect. And I think that actually these like meat replacements and egg replacements, things like that, are great to help you with this transition. And they're also great to keep in your diet once in a while when you're not feeling like having beans and when you actually want to eat a burger that tastes like a burger. Get the vegan food essentials. So as a new vegan, it's important that you know which foods you should always be keeping in your fridge or in your pantry. So here's a little list that I made. So your fridge should always be full of like fresh fruit and veggies, tofu, tempeh, plant-based milks and yogurts and cheeses, vegan eggs, meat alternatives, vegan butter, things like that. So that's your fridge. And then for your pantry, make sure that you have a ton of vegan, non-perishable items to make cooking easier. So my favorite essentials include like canned and jarred foods like black beans, kidney beans, white beans, chickpeas, corn, lentils, green peas or green beans. And I also love to have dried fruit, nuts and seeds, and nut butter. And then for grains, I always have whole wheat pasta. Make sure it's vegan because some have eggs. I also have brown rice, bulgur, couscous, quinoa, and oats. And then also don't forget to stock up on frozen fruit and vegetables. That's a big tip. Make diverse plates. If you're first starting out and like don't really know what you're doing, then becoming vegan can seem pretty bland or boring, but that is so far from the truth. Make sure that you're always creating healthy, balanced, and diverse plates. You can follow the plate method that I talk about in a video right here or in the description. And I also advise you when you go vegan to like have a bunch of different vegetables, fruit, grains, things like that that are always kind of ready, or at least always in your fridge or your pantry, that you can always kind of mix and match to make different bowls, like colorful, flavorful bowls. Like for instance, you can have always like avocado, tomatoes, corn, beans, and then different grains like brown rice, white rice, quinoa, bulgur, buckwheat, then like pineapple, mango, different herbs, things like that. And you can just kind of mix it around, and that's a way to create a pretty balanced and diverse plate, which will help you get in lots of nutrients and also not be bored with the vegan diet. Watch out for certain deficiencies. When done well, a vegan diet is great for your health, but you do have to be a little bit more careful of certain deficiencies. And the most important one is vitamin B12. The daily value for vitamin B12 is 2.4 micrograms, and to put that into perspective, that's like the amount you would get from like 3 ounces, a 3-ounce salmon, or like 85 grams of salmon. That's like not a huge portion of salmon. So as a vegan, it's absolutely crucial that you take some sort of supplement for B12 because it's found in animal foods. You can also find it in some vegan foods that have been fortified with it, like nutritional yeast or like certain breakfast cereals, certain plant-based milks, things like that. So you can check the label for that and make sure that you're getting enough. But I just would recommend, for like peace of mind, if you're not eating these foods on the daily, to just get a vitamin B12 supplement. Some people opt for a shot. You can talk about that with your doctor and see what is best for you. And also, if you were used to eating lots of red meat and seafood, you want to be a little bit mindful of your iron levels. So make sure that you're eating plant-based foods that have iron, such as beans and legumes, tofu, dark chocolate, like dark leafy greens, things like that, and that you're pairing them with a source of vitamin C to enhance their absorption. I made a whole video on iron if you're interested, right here or in the description. And finally, make sure that you are getting enough calcium and vitamin D that is usually found on in dairy. So make sure that you're getting plant-based milks and cheeses, yogurts, things like that are fortified in calcium and vitamin D. And then if you're not getting enough vitamin D, you're not seeing enough sunlight, then make sure that you supplement using vitamin D2 because vitamin D3 is not vegan. How to get enough protein as a vegan. Your body can't really store protein, so it's important that you do get enough quality protein. And it's true that meat is an easy and good source of protein, but it's not the only source, and it's totally possible to get enough protein on a vegan diet. You just have to plan for it a little bit more. And it's also true that plant protein is a little less digestible, and maybe the amino acids in there are, you have all the essential amino acids, it's just that they aren't in maybe the sufficient quantities if you were to eat them on their own. But if you eat different sources of plant foods, and if you complement the sources of plant food, then you will definitely reach the levels that you need for every amino acid, no problem. It doesn't need to be like every single meal you're eating every single amino acid. If throughout the day you're eating a variety of different plant foods that have protein, then you're going to be all good. But it is good to know where to find the protein. And here are some foods that you can find protein in. So in tofu, oats, edamame, corn, chickpeas, lentils, beans, nuts, quinoa, whole wheat grains like whole wheat pasta. And it can also be a good idea to include like more processed but still useful vegan protein sources, especially in the beginning while you're kind of learning about whole plant-based sources of protein. But you can definitely have some plant-based protein powder or like protein bars, some like meat and dairy substitutes that we talked about, things like that to help up your protein content. Can anyone be vegan? So like I've mentioned before, being vegan can definitely be very beneficial in terms of health, but it definitely isn't for everyone. Not everyone will benefit from that. There's a huge financial and privilege aspect to it, which again I address a lot more in my vegetarian for beginners video. So that's a huge factor. But in terms of purely health, there are also certain people for which being vegan is not ideal. For instance, people who have like different allergies, people who are allergic to like soy or nuts, or like even both combined, that can make it really difficult to get enough protein and like iron. People who are intolerant to like beans, legumes, things like that, also that's not great for them. People who have like celiac disease or intolerant to gluten, will probably be hard for them to find something that's both like gluten-free and vegan. People who have IBS as well, it can be a vegan diet won't necessarily be the best for their gut health. Some people also have like fructose malabsorption or intolerance. You know, it's pretty rare, but it does happen, and that may make it difficult for them to eat a lot of the food on a vegan diet. Also, if you have like certain diseases like epilepsy, and you're better off eating a more like keto diet, it can be hard to like have like a keto and vegan diet. If you have like autism spectrum disorder and you have like a few foods that are safe to you and that don't trigger you in terms of aspect and taste or flavor, things like that, then maybe you don't want to limit your options even more by going vegan. And then finally, if you suffer from an eating disorder, if you're trying to recover from that, if you're, for instance, trying to recover from anorexia, you don't want to be adding a vegan diet that will further your restrictions and your limitations, or will even like encourage you to restrict in the name of like health or ethics. So those are all the reasons why being vegan may not be for you. But if you don't identify with any of these, then please feel free to go ahead. And then if you do, that doesn't mean that you still that you can't be vegan, but you just have to be a little bit more mindful. And I would say make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, that you're not making things overly difficult or like overly complicated. And now for some quick bonus tips. Remember not to be too hard on yourself. It's better to be 95% vegan and then have like a few slip-ups some of the time, rather than being not vegan because you're like, this is too hard, I can't do this all the time. Even making an effort towards veganism and towards diminishing your your animal consumption, your animal product consumption, that's already great. So don't beat yourself up, and also be kind to others and don't be preachy. If you want them to become vegan like you, do it by inspiring them and not by trying to convert them or saying that their way of doing things is bad. Don't do that. Also, remember to schedule in some extra time for cooking, meal planning, grocery shopping, all of these things as a new vegan, because inevitably things will change for you and you don't want to get frustrated with yourself if you're used to spending a certain time cooking. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different now because you're changing up your habits, so just plan for it so that everything goes smoothly. If you're going vegan in a non-vegan household, like for instance, if your parents aren't vegan, then try to explain in a calm, rational way why you have decided to go vegan without being preachy, without criticizing them for their choices, anything like that, without imposing your choice on them. You can instead offer to maybe watch documentaries if they're interested, or send them some articles if they'd like. And then you can also show them that you've done research and that you know how to eat healthily in a vegan way. And you know, if you're not the one doing the cooking, then you can offer to like help cook a vegan recipe together once in a while, things like that, to kind of make things easier. But I know it's probably really tough, and if you're not able to be fully vegan yet, that's okay. Know that you're doing your best, and again, it's better to do a little bit than to be like perfect and not have it be sustainable. And finally, make sure that you keep that motivation, that initial motivation that you had in the beginning. Make sure that you revive it by watching documentaries or cooking fun vegan recipes, or talking to inspiring vegan people, or following vegan creators that you admire, anything like that. When things get a little bit hard, remember why you started and you'll be great. So hopefully this video was helpful and you now have your complete guide to being vegan. Again, I recommend that you watch my vegetarian guide for like a complimentary information, and I put a few of my sources in the description. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it and subscribe, and see you on my next one. Bye.